My name is Mike Blackworth. I think I probably know most everybody here one way or another, but sure appreciate you guys showing up. I'm going to play a little bit of a famous celebrity that we have among us, and if I remember how to do this. There we go. Anybody know this fella?
About making money. It's about finding your purpose. In fact, leadership is about finding your purpose. Innovation is about finding your purpose. In fact, anything meaningful starts with finding your purpose. And a great way to do that is by talking to other leaders, which is why I hope you'll join me at the Enterprise Exchange on August 2nd. This is an event organized by Venture Call that will allow nonprofit leaders a chance to learn from business owners here in the Abilene community, and likewise for business owners to talk to nonprofit leaders to find out what we have in common and how we can and a greater purpose for our overall community. Follow the link that's attached to this email, or go to venturecall.com/exchange.
Let's give him a big hand. Wasn't that excellent? Thanks, Michael Bob, for doing that. When I went around, I asked each of the panelists to do a little clip. I was sort of thinking that this is going to take me 2 or 3 or 4 takes, because that's what it took Jim Clark and I, right, Jim? I mean, we had to do 3 or 4 takes to get it kind of halfway normal. And as Michael Bob, he said, "What do you think about that for just about a minute?" He thinks about 60 seconds. He says, "Okay, I think I got it." Boom. That. So, I mean, how succinct can you get? Another one that did an excellent job with that, well, he went a little bit longer, about a minute and 38 seconds, but then again, he's a preacher, okay? We won't mention any names, Rob, but he's a preacher. And he didn't even have to think a minute, okay? And he did his thing, you know, and it was, whoa, 1 take, and I'm going, okay? So I appreciate all of you that, if you didn't get a chance to look at the website on the registration page, all of the people that I've asked to be what I call panelists today did a little 1 minute or 30-second or minute 30-second promo for us and sent it out to some of their constituents and their friends and so forth, inviting them to come to this event. So I really appreciate you guys and ladies doing that. So as what I'm going to do this first 20 minutes or so is kind of give you a little bit of orientation, because some of you don't have a real full understanding why you're here, okay, probably, because somebody probably asked you to come, and probably that was me, actually. But I'm going to try to give you a little bit more explanation, kind of what we're hoping to be able to do here today. And so bear with me for a few minutes, and then we'll get on into other pieces of the program. All right. I'm not going to stand behind that, okay? Just want to make sure you guys are kind of, it's going to be a tough angle for some of y'all. As I was thinking about this whole process, I kind of thought about what are sometimes some common perceptions. I've had the privilege of starting a nonprofit organization years ago in the mid-90s. Some of you know that. And that nonprofit existed for about 17 years. Then have subsequently started some businesses as well. And so working in both of those worlds, I also worked in the government world. And I always like to say that I'm kind of trilingual. You know, all those worlds have their own language. They got their own acronyms, you know, and so forth. So a lot of times I've kind of noticed that there's somewhat of an invisible barrier between the nonprofit world sometimes and the for-profit business world, okay? And so as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about some of the common perceptions that you sometimes see. For instance, for for-profit businesses, you ever heard or thought that, hey, they're just interested in the bottom line, they just got to figure out how to make a buck, and that's really what they're interested in, that's what their whole existence is about is making money, right? On the nonprofit side, well, they're just interested in getting it, right? Acquiring that money so that they can do their mission, whatever their mission happens to be. Another reflection is a lot of times they're just cold-hearted capitalists, those business people, you know. And on the other side, sometimes business people think nonprofits don't have any business sense at all. Now, are any of these concepts foreign to you, or are they just my own personal benefits? Come on, you can talk back, okay? This can be interactive. So sometimes, I think the business people are Republicans and nonprofit people are Democrats. Sometimes we go that way, right? Sometimes we think the for-profit businesses only care about customers who buy from them. And on the other side, you got the bleeding hearts that give money and resources to lazy people, right? The businesses are cutthroat competitors out there, battling out with their competitors so that they can have the upper hand. While the nonprofits, they're just uninformed do-gooders. You look at the for-profit businesses sometimes, they really come up with slick marketing schemes, you know. They put a lot of money into advertising and so forth. And when we're sitting there looking at the advertising, you know, well, that's a lie. You still sit there and look at it, right? On the other side, on the nonprofit side, a lot of times, nonprofits, from my perspective, kind of rely on three ways to get revenue. You have to have revenue. You have to either get donations, grants, or fundraising. So most of the time when I talk to nonprofit people, that's what they're focused on when it comes to revenue. And revenue generation itself, in a lot of nonprofit realms, for years, some nonprofits have been looking at generating revenue in other ways besides those three ways. Is anybody here familiar with the outfit in San Francisco called Lansing? The Lansing Street Program? Average. They've been around for years and years and years. Non-profit, but they have all kinds of for-profit revenue generation schemes, don't they, Richard? Yeah. And they have a 5-star restaurant, for instance, in San Francisco. And so they get guys out of prison and so forth coming in, and the first thing they're doing is, you know, washing the floors, taking care of the bathrooms, all that kind of stuff. And these guys may be all tanned up, you know, that sort of thing. But they start learning how to serve people. And they can work their way up progressively to being the maitre d' or something like that, okay? And so consequently, you know, those people have been out there for a long time. Some nonprofits, at this point, some of the larger nonprofits are really thinking about what assets do we have to be able to do revenue generation things, you know, out there. You need the mic. You need me to use the mic? Is that just because you're old and you can't hear right? Okay, sorry.
My hearing aids in.
Oh, okay, your hearing aids in. Okay, sorry. Thank you. So I hope today, especially for some of the nonprofits, some of the things that you're going to be hearing about may be some things that help stimulate some of that entrepreneurial thinking, stimulate some of those ideas that we've thought about. I was in a meeting probably about a year ago here in town at a nonprofit that is well-known nonprofit, and they had a whole group of city leaders and so forth sitting there, and they were talking about this very issue of what we call social enterprise, where they are trying to think about the assets that they have and how they might be able to make money out of it. And they were talking about the possibility of starting a restaurant, for instance. So, okay, sometimes with businesses, you know, we kind of sometimes think of used car salesman or something, that kind of crass and pushy, you know. And somehow the perception for people who work at nonprofits sometimes can be really noble and humble. So those are things I dreamed up. You may have other things you think. Here's some common problems, if you will, between two. For-profit businesses need customers. And I know there's some young businesses sitting right here. And when you're a young business just starting out, that's one of the premier things is how do you get customers? Well, I can tell you, some of these nonprofits sitting right here have all kinds of clients and people that have been vetted to some degree that are looking for jobs, okay? And I'll give you an example. About 3 weeks ago, a businessman in town caught me over at the bank and talked to me, and the first thing he started talking to me about was, hey man, do you know anybody? I'm looking for somebody. I need somebody to come on and I'm going to train them. You know, they don't have to have a background in this. I'm going to spend this time training them. I think there's some real upward mobility on this. And he's talking to me about 10 minutes about this. And so I'm scratching my head thinking, well, you know, I might know somebody, a guy. I'm trying to go through the Rolodex of my mind. And after we got done talking about that, he went right on in, and my friend Caleb Kelsey, sitting up here, had invited him to this event. And so he said to me, he said, man, I'm not going to come to that. You know, nonprofits don't really have anything I'm interested in. I said, hang on just a minute. You spent the last 10 minutes telling me you need to have an employee, and it wasn't like a highly technical position or anything. I can name you 5 nonprofits right now that have people that are looking for jobs, and they've been vetted to some degree by those nonprofits. And you would have thought the light bulb would have gone off in his head, because consequently, somebody like Christian Service Center, somebody like that that deals with hundreds and hundreds of people, and that have processes for them to be able to serve them, would have a much higher solution than just me, you know. But he was asking me if I had somebody. So I think when we start thinking about some of the things today, looking at this, that's one of the exchanges that I think that can take place. And think about that. Other thing that for-profit businesses need, as we said, is employees, like I just used as an example. Nonprofit organizations have staff and board members. They need business services. Yeah. You still need your roof repaired if it's leaking. You still need IT equipment, you know, and so forth. So, another thing for-profit businesses, they want a positive public image. And on the nonprofit side, they're needing accountability to their donors. For-profit businesses also need outreach projects. You're going to hear about some of these today. Some phenomenal things that I didn't know was going on in the community that when you hear it, I think it will blow your mind. Okay, and that's the idea, is to start instigating this entrepreneurial thinking, or this innovative thinking of things that you can take home and make application of. I always know that at events like this, or we've all been to trade shows, and we've been to workshops and seminars, and we're all excited about that, and I've had my fair share of that. And come home with the best of intentions of implementing something, and I get home and all the stuff is stacked on my desk, got 18,000 emails and so forth and so on. What happens? I get trapped right back in the same routine. And I don't think I'm that unusual. That happens. So what happens at the event is what we call inspiration. Okay? And inspiration has to connect with motivation in here for real change to take place. When we get inspired, something breathed into us, you know, from the outside, and we see the ideas. So that's part of what today is about. But my prayer is that it will connect with motivation, with reason, with things that's already deposited in you, and connect so that real change starts taking place. And you may implement just one thing in either your business or your organization that makes a difference in the lives of the people you serve. And trust me, businesses, nonprofits, listen, businesses serve people. Okay? And you're going to hear some of them talk about that kind of service that they have. A lot of times we refer to it as customer service, but they also serve their employees too. It's a fantastic example set right here in this room. For-profit businesses need to grow new managerial and organizational expertise. Sometimes young nonprofits are just scrimping by the way, like new businesses, scrimping by, just trying to make ends meet because they have a vision, they're working off the power of the vision, but they don't know anything about running a business, you know. And that's where the businesses, you can exchange with them the things that you know to be able to help them build a solid foundation to springboard on. Nonprofit people, they need human resources, i.e. they need volunteers. And that's something else that I think that can happen today. In the connection process, the business is finding out, especially young businesses finding out, golly, I didn't know that's what you did. I have a real affectation for that. There's something about that that just strikes me here. I need to get connected with you guys. So I'm hoping that happens today. For-profit businesses need to understand the trends of the local John Q. public say. And on the nonprofit side, they're needing strong fiscal policies and management, financial management. Because the thing with so much with nonprofits and having had started a nonprofit, you're driven by your passion for your purpose. You want to help people in a particular segment, you know. And that's the premier thing. How do you go about doing that, you know? And most of the time, especially starting out, not thinking about the foundational piece of the financial management and all that. That's where the businesses can help you. I've said for a long time that people that sit on nonprofit boards probably, and business people who sit on nonprofit boards would probably be a bigger asset to them rather than being a quasi fundraiser. Saying, well, let me send my CPA over there to work with you for a week to get your financials in order, you know, and get them set up to where they're practically being utilized every day, maximum impact, okay? And for-profit businesses, even if you're a mature business, when you get to maturity, you're looking for new markets, right? New products. And the nonprofit side, you guys are needing material resources. In the nonprofit world, they call it in-kind contribution, not just cash. Yeah, they need cash, don't get me wrong, but other things that they can benefit from is in-kind contribution. So, what time is it?
10:24.
24, okay. All right, I've already talked about some of the purpose of this enterprise exchange. The thing about enterprise exchange, the reasoning I came up with that name is, as I was thinking about my work in nonprofit work and my work in for-profit work, both of them are enterprises, okay? Enterprise just means an undertaking. It's something that, somebody taking care of me.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can see perfectly well right here. The word enterprise just means undertaking. I love to do etymology studies. Those of you that know me very well, you know I'm kind of geeky like that. I like to look at the meaning of words and definitions and where they came from. And so when I'm studying in the Bible, I like to look at the Greek and the Hebrew and that kind of stuff and pretend like I know what that means. But when I look at the word enterprise, it just means undertaking. So whether you're doing something with nonprofit work or for-profit work, the word enterprise works just as easily. And then the whole idea of exchange, I think you're starting to get the idea, hopefully, from what I've already said, that today is about exchange. In the business world, we talk a lot about ROI, which stands for what? Return on investment. Okay? In the nonprofit world, you may not speak so much of return on investment, but you have an accountability to your donors, customers, right? You know, and they too want a return on their investment because they want to know, what are you doing with my money and what kind of impact is it making in the community, right? So the same principle exists. You may use just different language, but the same principle exists. So that's the reason I call this the Enterprise Exchange. Also on the logo, going back to what Michael Bob Starr said, was, you know, it's prosperity with a purpose. Okay? A lot of times in the nonprofit world, people get all hinky about the word profit. You ever notice that? It's like, there's, you know, wickedness. You make profit. But they got to have profit. That's the strange thing about it. Profit. But, so I chose the word differently rather than profit. I chose the word prosperity. Because it seems like, how do you define prosperity that works? And prosperity with a purpose works. Okay? And in preparation for this, I kind of came up with a little saying that says, prosperity without a transcendental purpose is just profit. Prosperity without a transcendental purpose is just profit. In other words, it's just money. Money is neither good or bad. The prosperity, we all want that. We want that for ourselves, we want that for our clients, we want that for our customers. That's what we want. Okay? So hopefully, in this exchange today, we'll be touching on that. So, and some of the other things I've got here, you guys can read them, but I think I probably covered all this stuff in my additional comments. So I'm going to go to the next thing, which is the sheet. The sheet that Pete set out there. My friend Pete over here, Pete, stand up for just a minute, sir. He came all the way from Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls to come and be a part of this and be the right-hand guy to me. So let's give Pete a thank you. He does a lot. He just got, for you and me, from the military background, he just got promoted to be tech sergeant recently, and congratulations to him for that. And he's real heavy-handed into leadership development, and in fact, he's got to break away about 11 o'clock today to have a conference call with a chief or something, right? Leadership session. So, anyway, thank you. Okay, that handout that you have, I'm not going to take time to read it to you, but you've got definitions there, and that's just part of my geekiness I was telling you about. But what my thought was, is that you take this worksheet with you throughout the day, and really there's a couple of things that I want you to pay attention to.
Do you have an extra sheet, Mike?
Pete, you got extra sheets?
It's right there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sure.
But you might take a second, because we're talking about purpose, as Michael Bob Starr talked about in his video. And why does your enterprise exist? What needs does it supply for others? You might want to jot something down in a couple of words. Whom does your enterprise serve or would like to serve? We all kind of have our target audiences or our target customer base and that kind of thing. Because most of us are not being everything to everyone, right? But the next two squares really have to do with, as you walk through this day, you're going to hear things that are resources that different for-profits and nonprofits have that you think, oh goodness, either I need to connect with them because I need those myself in our organization, and those are the needs, or a light bulb may go off and say, gosh, we have that. We have that. That's a resource that we have. It's an asset we have. And so remember that whole issue of exchange. If it's an asset you have, it's worth something. And it's worth something to somebody else, and maybe somebody else sitting right in this room. And think of it in those terms, that this might be something to exchange for something that they have. Okay? So you can have that sheet, and I would encourage you to use it to kind of walk through the day and jot some notes down. And on the back side, you kind of have just a rough outline of what